They seized his father and sent one demand: stand down or the old lord dies. The teenage warlord read the message, looked at his men, and gave an order no son should ever give. What kind of man does that? The kind who conquers everything. He was 17 years old when he gave an order that would haunt Japan for 4 centuries. His father was the hostage. Did that stop him? In 1567, in the mountainous northeast of Japan, Date Terumune fathered a son he named Bontenmaru. The Date clan controlled much of Mutsu and Dewa provinces, powerful enough to matter, not yet powerful enough to dominate. When the boy was barely 2 years old, smallpox swept through the castle. He survived, but the disease took his right eye, leaving a scarred and hollow socket. His mother, Yoshihime of the Mogami clan, reportedly urged the disfigured child be disinherited. His father refused. The boy would live. He would lead. And that empty socket would become the most feared sight in the north. In the summer of 1584, 17-year-old Bontenmaru, now Date Masamune, formally became head of the Date clan after his father stepped aside. The timing was catastrophic. Northern Japan was fracturing. The Mogami clan to the southwest, the Ashina to the west, the Hatakeyama and Soma pressing from every direction. Neighbors watched the new teenage lord and calculated, this is the moment to strike. They saw a boy. They were mistaken. Within months, Masamune had launched his first independent military campaigns, not to defend borders, but to expand them. The man who shaped Masamune more than any other was not his father, but his chief strategist, Katakura Kagetsuna, known as Kojiro. Kojiro was older, steadier, possessed of a political intelligence that perfectly complemented Masamune's volcanic aggression. Where Masamune wanted to charge, Kojiro calculated. Where Masamune burned bridges, Kojiro quietly preserved alliances. They were inseparable for 40 years, a partnership so famous it entered Japanese legend. But in 1584, Kojiro faced his hardest task, advising a 17-year-old who burned to prove himself, surrounded by enemies on every side, and unwilling to hear the word patience. Masamune's early campaigns shocked his opponents with their ferocity. He did not move like a lord protecting territory. He moved like a predator, expanding it. The Nihonmatsu clan, the Inawoshiro, the Ashina, all found that the new Date Lord offered terms once, then attacked without hesitation if refused. What distinguished him was the absence of sentimentality. Other Sengoku warlords fought with one eye on honor and reputation. Masamune simply fought to win. His men were paid, fed, and led from the front. Loyalty flowed both ways. Fear of him flowed in every direction. By the autumn of 1585, The Hatakeyama clan had become Masamune's most pressing problem. They controlled a strategic corridor between Date territory and the coast, land Masamune needed. Their lord, Hatakeyama Yoshitsugu, watched the young warlord's expansion with growing alarm. Date Terumune attempted to play the role of moderating force, reminding his son that not every dispute required war, that alliances built through diplomacy outlasted those built through conquest. Masamune listened. He also continued planning. The collision between his father's diplomacy and his own ambition was approaching faster than either man realized. In October 1585, Date Terumune accepted an invitation to meet Hatakeyama Yoshitsugu in person, a diplomatic visit intended to ease mounting tensions. He rode out with a modest escort, a gesture of goodwill signaling that the Date clan sought peace. It was a fatal miscalculation. Hatakeyama had no intention of negotiating. As Terumune prepared to leave after the meeting, the Hatakeyama soldiers closed in from every side. He was seized, pulled from his horse, and taken hostage. Word reached Masamune within hours. Stand down, withdraw your forces, or Date Terumune would not return alive. Masamune rode to intercept the Hatakeyama party before they could reach the safety of their own territory. He arrived in time to see it clearly. His father, surrounded by enemy soldiers, being marched away at sword point. Across the crowd of armed men, the two made eye contact. What Terumune did next would be remembered for centuries. He called out to his son, not pleading to be rescued, but issuing a command. Attack. Do not stop. Do not let them use me as a bargaining piece. Let them kill me if they must. Preserve the clan. The teenage warlord had seconds to decide.
The Hatakeyama soldiers outnumbered Masamune's men. A direct assault meant his father would die in the fighting. He knew this. His advisors urged caution. Kojuro stood beside him, silent. The choice was not merely tactical, but existential. If Masamune accepted the ransom terms, he would signal to every lord in the north that Date territory could be leveraged through hostage-taking. Every rival watching this moment would reach the same conclusion. Capture someone Masamune loves, and he will yield. He could not be that kind of warlord. Not even for his father. Not even for the man who had refused to disinherit him. He gave the order. Date soldiers charged into the Hatakeyama party. In the chaos of the fighting, Date Terumune was killed, cut down in the melee, his life the price of his son's decision. By some accounts, Terumune himself had called the charge, choosing death over captivity to protect his clan's dignity. By others, Masamune simply calculated and acted. The Hatakeyama were destroyed. Their lord was killed. The crisis ended. And Masamune stood somewhere on a road in the mountains of northern Japan, not yet 20 years old, victorious and utterly transformed by what he had just chosen. What changed in Masamune that day is difficult to name precisely, but every account of his life agrees. Something did. The teenager who rode out that morning was not the same man who rode back. Something closed inside him, or perhaps something opened. He had discovered what he was capable of when forced to choose between sentiment and power. He had discovered in the most brutal way possible that he could always choose power. Katakura Kojiro watched it happen and said nothing. He had perhaps always known which choice his lord would make. It had simply needed the right moment to prove it.
The campaigns that followed were extraordinary for their speed and ferocity. In 1586, Masamune crushed the Nihonmatsu clan. At Tsuriyagehara in 1589, he defeated the Ashina in one of the largest battles ever fought in northeastern Japan. By his early 20s, he had tripled Date territory, bringing more than 1 million koku under his control. Rivals who had watched the teenage heir with contempt now scrambled to submit or flee. The North had a new master. What drove him was not grief exactly. It was the lesson of October 1585. Hesitation kills. Act first. Decide first. Grieve never.
There was a darkness at home that matched the violence in the field. Masamune's mother, Yoshihime of the Mogami clan, had never forgiven her son for his father's death, or so the stories say. She had always favored his younger brother, the gentler Kojiro. After Terumune's death, tensions within the Date household fractured. According to the most dramatic accounts, Yoshihime placed poison in her eldest son's food. Masamune tasted it, survived. Whether the story is entirely accurate is debated by historians. That Masamune believed it and acted on that belief is not.
Masamune's response was swift and devastating. He ordered the execution of his younger brother Kojiro, a teenager, removed as a potential rallying point for dissent. Yoshihime was expelled from the castle and fled to her birth family, the Mogami clan. The man who had ordered his father killed in the field now ordered his brother killed in the castle. Whether driven by paranoia, necessity, or cold calculation, the result was the same. The family Masamune had been born into no longer existed. He had, one decision at a time, consumed everything that might have held him back.
There is a quality to Masamune's solitude that historians have noted. He was surrounded by men who feared and admired him, commanded by a strategist who would serve him loyally for 40 years. But Masamune had severed himself from every personal attachment that could be weaponized against him. His enemies had taught him the lesson in October 1585. Love is a vulnerability that will be found and used. He had absorbed it completely. He was perhaps 20 years old. He was, by every measure, already the most formidable warlord north of Kyoto. And he had made himself that way entirely alone. The crescent moon crest on his helmet became the most feared symbol in the north. His black armor, his empty eye socket, he cultivated the image deliberately. Masamune had understood something about power that many Sengoku commanders missed. Perception precedes reality on the battlefield. If your enemies believe you are capable of anything,
including killing your own father. They hesitate before forcing you to prove it again. That hesitation is the advantage. He had built his entire military reputation on the silence that falls when people realize there is nothing he will not do. The silence was worth 10,000 soldiers.
Toyotomi Hideyoshi eventually brought Masamune to heel, not through battle, but through the credible threat of it. Summoned to Hideyoshi's 1590 Odawara campaign, Masamune appeared famously late, wearing white funeral robes, as if prepared to be executed for his insubordination. Hideyoshi laughed and spared him, but he trimmed Date territory and kept Masamune where he could be watched. Even the man who unified Japan was cautious around the one-eyed dragon. Tokugawa Ieyasu later did the same, keeping Masamune close, useful, and never quite powerful enough to threaten the new order. Two of the three great unifiers of Japan handled Date Masamune with care. Date Masamune lived until 1636, dying at 68, having outlasted Hideyoshi's family, the chaos of Sekigahara, and Tokugawa's consolidation. He spent the second half of his life as a great lord under a greater shogun, channeling his energy into culture, architecture, and the development of Sendai domain into one of Japan's most prosperous regions. He never forgot, and history never let him forget, that he had arrived too late, that had he been born 5 years earlier, the East might have been his. The warlord who killed his father at 17 lived long enough to understand what peace costs and what it is worth. Next time on Samurai Chronicles, before Japan's last samurai uprising, there were the forgotten years, an exile on a remote southern island, alone with the sea and his principles. A general who had devoted his life to Japan's emperor, now discarded, watching the country he loved transform into something he barely recognized. Next time, the hidden years of Saigo Takamori. The boy who rode out to save his father came back as something else entirely. History remembers Date Masamune as the one-eyed dragon. But dragons are made, not born. And the fire that makes them always costs something precious. Subscribe to Samurai Chronicles for new episodes every day. We will see you next time.